everyone, Signets here with my Guild Wars 1 skill review project. I'm talking about the Monk part, and the subpart is, in terms of attributes, is Smiting Prayers. So, Smiting Prayers is a weird spot. It's very, very, very mixed. Some of the skills are really strong. A lot of the skills are really weak and underwhelming. Most of them deal holy damage, which is useful because it deals double damage to undead, which are relatively common in various parts of the game. So that can be useful. But for the most part, Smiting Prayers tends to be very underwhelming. And that's just because ArenaNet wanted to not have the healing class, like the class that's really, really good at healing, also be an offensive powerhouse. And the result is that it's definitely usually not an offensive powerhouse. That said, there are, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe to 8 skills that are pretty solid. We'll just go ahead and go through them, starting with Balthazar's Aura. So one of the things you're going to see a lot in these first couple of skills is references to Balthazar. Balthazar is the god of war in the game's mythology, in the game's lore. And Smiting Prayers is flavorfully cast as being worshippers of Balthazar rather than Duena, where the other divine favor and healing prayers and protection prayers is flavorfully coming from. So, Smiting Prayers, Balthazar's Aura. Balthazar's Aura is 25 energy, which is a lot. It is a 2-second cast time, 25-second recharge. Enchantment spell, for 8 seconds, foes adjacent to target ally take 22 holy damage each second. So basically you're setting up an effect on an ally that pulses holy damage. This is super expensive. This is not worth 25 energy. It's maybe worth 15, arguably. Like, at 10 to 15 energy and like a 15 to 20 second recharge, somewhere in that general neighborhood, I'd like this a lot more. But as it is, this is just so expensive. I'm going to give this guy a 2. I don't think it's terrible, but it's just super overcosted. The effect can be a lot of fun if you're wading into a bunch of undead, but this is not a skill that I typically bring on my bars. Again, though, like a lot of these monk skills, I actually really like the icon. So, anyway, Balthazar's Pendulum. 5 energy, quarter-second cast time, 5-second recharge, elite enchantment spell. For 9 seconds, the next time target ally would be knocked down by a foe, that foe is knocked down instead. I do not care. So I do not typically bring anti-knockdown skills, because most of the time enemies are not knocking down, and when they do, it's pretty easy to recover. The thing is, you have to be really on top of understanding what enemies cannot... Like, this is a really hard skill to use, is what I'm trying to get at here. Like, you have to be on top of when the enemy is going to be using a knockdown skill, and then you have to preempt it on the ally by at least a little bit. If this was something where, like, it went on all allies when you used it or something, I don't even know. Like, it's really hard to actually use this effectively. It takes up your elite slot, which there is no way I'm spending my elite slot on this. And most of the time, honestly, if I want to be stopping knockdowns, it's because an enemy's using Giant Stomp. Those enemies are immune to knockdown anyway. So, like, honestly, I'm not interested in this. I'm not interested in this at all. So, I'm going to give this a 1. It's an elite that, honestly, is very hard to make good use of, and even when it is being effective, it's questionable. So, yeah, taking up the elite slot is just so bad. Balthazar's Spirit. This is 1 pip of energy to maintain, 10 energy to, it's 10 energy to cast, 2-second cast time, no recharge. Enchantment spell. While you maintain this enchantment, target ally gains adrenaline and energy after taking damage. The amount of adrenaline gained increases depending on your rank in Smiting Prayers. So it scales with that. I'm not quite sure how effective it is. I really wish it was less ambiguous. That would be hard to figure out how to do properly, but if it was like percentage of a strike of adrenaline or something like that, I think this is okay. You can be a warrior and place this on yourself. but honestly, a lot of the time, like, this is rewarding you for taking damage. That can be okay, but it's not, like, the most exciting. Was it this or Essence Bond? I think it might be this, that monks would place on themselves when they're a bonder because they would be taking damage from Life Bond, and then they could gain energy from this. I think that was something that might have been done. Maybe it was Essence Bond. I'm not sure. I'd have to check to see if I have a bonder template, and I don't care enough. So Balthazar's Spirit it's one of those skills that's like, yeah, that's okay. They have to, like, be taking damage and stuff. I don't know. I'm going to give this a 2. I'm not a huge fan of this. It's a cool idea. Again, it has a really cool icon with this sword with swirly in a stone with swirly light around it, but, like, it's just kind of hard to make good use of. That's really what it comes down to. Because, again, there's no taunt aggro management system in this game, so, yeah. Bane Signet. Like, again, the design idea behind Balthazar's Spirit is cool. It's just really clunky and awkward to actually use well. Okay, so Bane Signet is 1 energy. It's no energy, it's a Signet. It's a 1 second cast time, 20-second recharge. Signet, target foe takes 50 holy damage if... and again, holy damage is armor ignoring. If the foe was attacking, they are knocked down. This is okay. Honestly, the recharge is kind of long. The knockdown's nice. Char like to use this, and it's really annoying. I don't know. To me, this is like... This is an okay skill. I don't know. I'm gonna give it... I'm gonna give it a 2. I just don't want to bring it very often. Like, this is not what I would go into Smiting Prayers for. I much prefer Castigation Signet, which we'll touch on momentarily once we get through Banish. So, yeah, I don't know. Bane Signet's... It's underwhelming, in my opinion. It's not a ton of damage. Its recharge is very long. The benefit... Like, its effect is fine. If it was, like, an 8 or 10-second recharge, I'd be like, yeah, this is a 3. But the 20-second recharge is just way too long on it. Banish. Banish, again, another cool icon. So, Banish is 5 energy, 1 second cast time, 10-second recharge. Spell, target foe takes 49 holy damage. This spell does double damage to summoned creatures. So, to Necromancer minions, this deals 4 times damage. It absolutely wrecks them, because that's like 200 damage plus that it's dealing to them. Which is cool. Here's the thing. Banish is emblematic of the general problem of Smiting Prayers. It's like, okay, with a big sigh on it, but it's just like, that recharge is just a bit long, the damage is a bit low. As an offensive skill, it's just not quite exciting enough. So, to me, Banish is like a solid meh. I'm gonna give it a 2. It's just... I want it to be more effective against summoned creatures, so where it would, like, absolutely wreck a spirit or something like that. And while it absolutely does wreck minions, it's going to have a really hard time getting through a horde of minions. The recharge is really low. The recharge is just really long. And if it did, like, area of effect, it would be more appealing. But it's just one of those things, like, this is the problem with Smiting Prayers. It's just so underwhelming. Castigation Signet. Castigation Signet is 1 second activation time, 20-second recharge. Signet, target foe takes 50 holy damage. If that foe is attacking, you gain 8 energy. This is pretty easy to get the energy on. You just have to look for an enemy that is attacking and then smack them with this. You are not bringing this for the 50 holy damage. That's a nice bonus. You're bringing this because it is energy management. You gain 8 energy off of it. If you're not gaining 8 energy off of it, you need to reconsider how you're using this skill. This one, to me, I'm going to give this a 4. It's a very high 4. If I'm running a Smiting Prayers build, it's probably on there because it does such good energy management, and those builds can actually be kind of energy intensive. So, Castigation Signet is sweet on those sorts of builds. but you're not bringing it for the damage. You're bringing it because it gains you energy. And that's just kind of how it works. I don't know. I don't have a lot more to say about it. I do think Smiting Prayers has a little bit of a crisis of identity in terms of it doesn't know whether or not it's trying to punish, or like, so it has Punisher effects like Holy Wrath, Retribution, Reversal of Damage, the Scourges, and things like Smite, and then it has stuff that's just kind of like straight up damage. I don't know. It's kind of a weird spot that sits in. It's just, yeah, it's not super powerful. There were going to be plans to rework Smiting Prayers at one point in time, but the release of Guild Wars 2 absorbed the team that was working on Guild Wars 1 and meant that it never happened, and that's kind of made me a little sad. Okay, so Defender's Zeal. Defender's Zeal is 5 energy, 1 second cast time, 5 second recharge. Elite Hex spell for 21 seconds. Whenever target foe hits with an attack, you gain 2 energy. Fun fact, I thought this was Area of Effect. It isn't. This can potentially be good energy management. I'm going to give this a 3. I feel like you could make decent use of this as energy management without having to put a ton into Smiting Prayers. And there might... yeah, there might be an okay build with this. You do need to... like... You are going to be able to get some energy from this, but I'm not quite sure how great it is in that regard. The biggest problem is it takes up your elite slot, and that's rough. It's typically okay to spend your elite slot on energy management. So, given attack rates that are like 1.33 seconds, excuse me, I think a lot of them are like 1.33 seconds. That's every 4 seconds they get 3 attacks. So this at these stats would be roughly 20. So no, that's going to be 5. That's going to be 15. So that's going to be roughly 30 energy that I could get off of one foe. That's a pretty reasonable return. You're probably not going to quite get that most of the time. So I don't know. This seems like it's okay, but not like the most amazing. It's a little awkward being in Smiting Prayers as well, because you really want to use it with your healing stuff, but here we are. There's an argument that you could go into Smiting Prayers and bring this rather than like Offering of Blood, but I think Offering of Blood is just going to be a little bit better most of the time. Holy Strike is the same skill as Stone Soul Strike all the way down here. They're both 5 energy, 3/4 second activation time, 8 second recharge skills that deal 46 damage, 46 holy damage to target touched foe. They're skills. They're so far apart. They are not spells. They're skills that might be relevant. And if your foe is knocked down, then they take an additional 46 holy damage. So this can actually deal pretty reasonable damage. I don't think these are amazing. I'm going to give them both 3s. So that's Holy Strike and Stone Soul Strike, whatever it is. Soul Stone, Stone Soul. I have it written down Stone Soul. Yeah, Stone Soul. I don't know why I was thinking Soul Stone. Because that's easier to pronounce, I guess. I like these situationally. Actually, no, 3s is too high. They should be 2s. Okay, so the reason why I was kind of giving them that is like a 3 is because they're actually pretty good for Smiting Prayers. I need to recalibrate to be like for general stuff. 8 second recharge is pretty reasonable, and you're getting 92 damage off of this, right? Because you're going to be using this on Hammer Warrior or like an assassin that has some sort of knockdown or something. I like this with knockdowns on a melee attacker. Like, you're a melee attacker, you're going in, you are knocking your enemy down, and then you're Holy Striking them or Stone Soul Striking them. And you're getting, a nice big additional chunk of armor ignoring damage. And that's really cool. I really like that. I think that these are cool synergy skills. That said, I'm not going to use these on a primary monk, so. Or, maybe I will use them on a primary monk that's for some random reason melee attacking. That's questionable, but you could, I guess, technically do that. But yeah, so I like the space that they are kind of in, and to me, these are some of the more interesting Smiting Prayers skills. Note that they also technically have synergy with like Bane Signet and Signet of Judgment and Shield of Judgment, which also can inflict knockdowns. Anyway, moving on to Holy Wrath. So Holy Wrath is 10 energy, which is a little bit high. It is 1 second cast time, 10-second recharge, an enchantment spell for 26 seconds, so it's pretty decently long-lasting. The next 8 times... Oh, wait, never mind. Target other ally takes attack damage. This spell deals 66% of the damage back to the source, maximum 41 damage. So this is kind of a Punisher. You'll notice it has that 8 times cap. Originally, that wasn't there. In fact, originally, this was a maintained enchantment, just like Retribution is. And the effect was kind of similar, whereas 66%. That was apparently abusive with certain farming techniques. There was the 600 farm where you'd be like Holy Wrath and Retribution on somebody, and like they would use the Spirit Bond protective spirit thing, and so as a 2-man farming team that would like go in and they would get attacked by things, and those things would kill themselves on the Holy Wrath and Retribution, and you're maximizing the damage from that by they're always taking 60 damage. So, like, is this really, cool sort of farm, and ArenaNet killed that because they killed farms. That's just how it worked. I think Holy Wrath is fine. I'm going to give this a 3. If I'm doing a Smiting Prayers build, there's a reasonable chance it'll fit on there, just because it does do it returns damage. It can be a little underwhelming. It is kind of expensive. I'd be more interested in this at 5 energy. Or a shorter duration and being uncapped on the number of times, or things like that. But it's fine-ish. It's a nice supplement to that build, but certainly not the chief reason why I'm going into it, that's for sure. Judge's Insight. So Judge's Insight is 10 energy. It is 2-second cast time, 10-second recharge. It is an enchantment spell for 18 seconds. Target allies' attacks deal holy damage and have plus 20% armor penetration. So it's really important to specify this holy damage that, say, Holy Strike deals or a Castigation Signet deals is armor ignoring. When it makes your weapon deal holy damage, I'm pretty sure that is not armor ignoring. However, like if it was armor ignoring, the 20% armor penetration would be a complete nombo, so it wouldn't work. So this holy damage does care about armor. However, it will deal double damage to undead. And it will get around... like warriors and rangers have plus armor against physical and elemental damage respectively. It will get past that as well, which is nice. 2-second cast time is real long. 10 energy is real high. The 20% armor penetration is really nice because it will allow you to deal additional damage. If something has 60 armor, it will cut through some of that and increase the damage you're dealing. To me, this is a 2. I think it's actually an okay spell in some circumstances. If you're going into an area with a lot of undead, for example, it can become really nice. That's the main time I'd actually consider bringing it if you're going to an area with a lot of undead. The White Mantle love it. They're always bringing this with them. But this is... most of the time, this is pretty unexciting. And if I'm wanting to increase damage, I'm actually going to use... Strength of Honor here. One of the good spells in Smiting Prayers. But, yeah. So Judge's Insight, it's okay, but is only really good in areas where you're against undead, where it not only has 20% armor penetration, but makes them deal double damage. In that case, it's okay. It's pretty solid. Judge's Intervention. So this is really similar to Divine Intervention. It is 5 energy, 1/4-second cast time, 8-second recharge. It is an enchantment spell. For 10 seconds, the next time target ally receives damage that would be fatal, the damage is negated, and one nearby foe takes 150 holy damage. So, just like I prefer Reversal of Fortune over Judge's Intervention, I prefer Reversal of Damage over Judge's Intervention. I don't want to be negating lethal damage on my ally. I want to be keeping them from... I don't want that situation to ever happen. So I don't want to be taking a skill that's like, this only works if that terrible situation is occurring. So to me, this is a 1. I never am going to bring this. I don't want Judge's Intervention. I don't want to spend a skill slot on it. It has a weird icon, too. I never want to spend a skill slot on this skill. It's just not... I would rather keep my ally alive through keeping them healthy rather than be like, I'm going to let you basically die, but it's going to do a lot of damage to somebody. If this was area of effect, it would be mildly more appealing, but even then, that's really dubious. So I just don't like this design paradigm of like, I'm undoing fatal damage or I'm triggering off of fatal damage. It's just, that's just so risky, and it's going to be really hard to work well with AI as well. So yeah. Kieran's Wrath. Again, we have another copy of it. Where is it? Symbol of Wrath. So Symbol of Wrath and Kieran's Wrath are the same skill. They're 5 energy, 2-second cast time, 30-second recharge. Again, it's the whole factions thing. When Guild Wars Factions came out, they decided to take a page out of Wizards of the Coast book, and just like there's Grizzly Bears and Runeclaw Bears that are the same card in terms of effect with a different name, so you can run both. They did that with a bunch of skills from Prophecies and made duplicates and factions with different names, so you can run both. I don't know why you would, because not all of the time, but a shocking percentage of the time, the skills they decided to make copies of were pretty friggin' terrible, or very underwhelming, or things like that. They were not the good skills. They were kind of like the, why would you make a second one of this sort of skill? So Kieran's Wrath and Symbol of Wrath. Symbol of Wrath, by the way, I love this icon. Look at that icon. It looks like a friggin'... There's a blue... Is it Supreme Judgment? There's a white and blue Wrath effect in Magic the Gathering from Return to Ravnica block that is an uncounterable destroy all creatures effect that has this really cool effect. And this reminds me of it. It looks so cool. It has literally no visible effect. Like, you activate this and there's nothing there that indicates that this is going on. Same, like, for either of these. I have no idea why. There is no indication of where they are. But they don't. Anyway, so there's a spell for 5 seconds. Foes adjacent to the location in which the spell was cast take 27 holy damage each second. I rather would bring Font of... Is it Lava Font? The Elementalist area of effect, where you set it off, and for a few seconds, enemies in the area take a bunch of fire damage. Even with a lot of armored reduction, that's not going... Like, it's going to reduce it to a similar level if it's like half. And that has a 4-second recharge, not a 30. I love, love, love this skill icon. This skill is bad. It's not unusable bad, but it's just so underwhelming. Like, that's Smiting Prayers in a nutshell. I'm going to give this a 2 and a 2 because they're the same skill and they deserve 2s. I give this icon like 10 out of 10. This is an amazing icon, though. Ray of Judgments. So Ray of Judgment is 10 energy, 2-second cast time, 20-second recharge, elite spell, invoke a Ray of Judgment at target foe's location for 5 seconds. Foes adjacent to that location are struck for 37 holy damage and begin burning for 3 seconds every second. This is a solid 5. This is part of why you go into Smiting Prayers, because this spell is really, really good. It does a bunch of armor-ignoring damage, pulsing through both holy damage and burning. This is really strong. This is such a good spell. And is probably the best spell in Smiting Prayers. I'm not positive on that, but it's probably the strongest elite. It is so very, very good. It just does so much damage, and it absolutely tears through undead. So this one's really good, and actually has an icon, or has an effect where it is, of this Pillar of Light, as you might expect. So I quite like Ray of Judgment. And a lot of other people do, too. Do I have anything to say more about this design-wise? I don't know. It's a pretty straightforward design. It's actually a good Smiting Prayer spell. That's pretty cool. Retribution in the land of cool skill icons. Retribution is 1 pip of energy to maintain, 10 energy to cast, and 2-second cast time, no recharge. Enchantment spell. While you maintain this enchantment, whenever target ally takes damage, this spell deals 33% of the damage back to the source. So you notice that this triggers off of any damage. Holy Wrath was specifically attack damage, whereas Retribution is any damage. It's also going to be really underwhelming a lot of the time. It caps out at 17 damage, and yes, it only reflects a third of that damage back. I don't know it really needed that cap. This is just really weak. It's dubiously has use in that 55 farming build that doesn't, or that 600 farming build, duo farming build that I don't know if it even works anymore. I don't ever bring this. I'm going to give this a 1. I just think it's very, very, very weak. It's mostly that it's very weak that I kind of give it a score like that. Plus, again, as I've said, you cannot... There's no aggro control in this game. So I'm just not interested in this guy, like, at all. Reversal of damage. So reversal of damage is 5 energy, quarter second cast time, 3-second recharge. Enchantment spell for 8 seconds. The next time target ally would take damage, the foe dealing the damage takes that damage instead to a maximum of 61. So this is like Reversal of Fortune, except the Smiting Prayers edition. Reversal of damage. So these guys are good buds. This one is like a key part of the standard Smiting Prayers build. So that standard build is like Ray of Judgment, Smite Hex, Smite Condition, Reversal of Damage, Castigation Signet for your energy management. We'll get to these guys in a moment, but they're pretty straightforward in terms of they get rid of that thing. Zealot's Fire, and then maybe a couple of utility things from Divine Favor. Like, this is kind of the general shape of that sort of build. So you'd bring Smiter's Boon right here, which doubles the Divine Favor bonus from Smiting Prayer spells that target allies. So that's where Reversal of Damage then becomes a strong heal, and so do Smite Hex and Smite Condition. This is such a key part of that build that I'm tempted to give it a 5, but I'm going to give it a 4, just because I always bring it if I go into the sort of Smiting Prayers build, but it doesn't pull me into it, whereas Ray of Judgment does. So I kind of feel like it doesn't quite deserve the full 5, if that makes sense. But it's certainly a really solid skill. So anyway, let's go ahead and I think it's good to have this style of this effect in here as well. I should add that makes this work this way. Or that plays into this idea. It's a great way of kind of implementing that. And it's a good spot between, like, I'm a monk, so I target my allies, and I'm damaging my enemies. And honestly, I kind of prefer this direction for Smiting Prayers to some extent than straight up something like Banish. Scourge Enchantment. 10 energy, 2-second cast time, 5-second recharge. Hex spell. For 30 seconds, each time target foe is the target of an enchantment, the caster of that enchantment takes 63 damage. I'm going to give this a 2. It's technically a counter to enchantment-based play, and in that regard, it deserves to be getting some points. I'm not going to just casually bring this. It's just not good enough for that. Like, the effect is okay, but basically, they really have to be using enchantments. I could see actually bringing this to combat Madness Titans and their obnoxious enchantments, because this is a Punisher mechanic, and I do like Punisher mechanics. I think those are more interesting. So, I like the idea of what this is. Honestly, it feels more like a Necromancer skill. And all of these kind of feel more Necromancer-y or Mesmer-y or something than Monkey to me. Without an E in Monkey. So I think the design of this is at a good spot, though. Like, this is a sort of design that I like to have in the game. It's just not something that comes up very often, and so I just don't really consider bringing it. I just usually do not consider bringing Smiting Prayers in general. So yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to. Scourge Healing. I touched on this because there's a Necromancer Elite in the Necromancer videos. There's a Necromancer Elite that is basically kind of like this. So Scourge Healing is 10 energy, 2 seconds cast time, 5-second recharge, hex spell. Excuse me. For 30 seconds, every time target foe is healed, the healer takes 67 holy damage. This is another 2. I'm not going to bring this unless I'm specifically going into an area where I'm like struggling with killing stuff because of the strength of the healers, and then throwing this around absolutely can wreck those healers and add a lot of additional pressure. Like I was saying, there's the Necromancer skill. So those are videos that you should be able to find. And it's in, I want to say Curses, yeah. Soulbind is the Necromancer Elite. That does not work with this skill. It specifically says it does not work if they have a Monk Hex on them. And this is not an Elite, so I actually prefer Scourge Healing over that for this purpose. They deal very comparable damage. It's armor ignoring, etc. The thing is, I'm not going to bring this most of the time. I appreciate the space that it's playing in terms of being a counter strategy, and that's really cool. It's probably one of those skills that's mildly okay, as long as there's actual healing going on. Like some low-level areas that's maybe a little dubious and things like that. But yeah, I think this is a perfectly reasonable effect, and I certainly like the design of it. It's just, in most PvE, I don't really have a good reason to bring this. Scourge Sacrifice. This is a very anti-Necromancer skill. It is 10 energy, 1 second cast time, 5 second recharge, Hex spell. For 18 seconds, every time target foe and adjacent foes sacrifice life, they sacrifice twice the normal amount. So this is specifically punishing, especially blood magic, which has a lot of life sacrifice. So I'm going to give this a 2, because it's technically a counter strategy. And I think that those usually deserve 2s. Like, this does a really powerful thing sometimes, but very rarely. So if there is life sacrifice going on, it's really good against a minion master who's using blood as power, because all of a sudden they're sacrificing so much health to keep their minions alive, and that is absolutely devastating. It's good against Blood Ritual as well, because that's a 33% sacrifice. Bringing it up to 66% is bad for them. But honestly, most of the time in PvE, this is the sort of effect that's nuanced in its power and just does not come up. So, I like that this exists from a design standpoint. I just typically do not have any use for it. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Okay, Shield of Judgment. Shield of Judgment is really obnoxious. You might have actually seen some of it if you watched last week the very long Wayfarer's Reverie video, because the Avakara in Mineral Springs use this. But Shield of Judgment is 15 energy, 1 second cast time, 45 second recharge, elite enchantment spell. For 18 seconds, anyone striking target ally with an attack is knocked down and suffers 41 holy damage. This is actually super powerful. Of an effect, because like, so they hit them, they get knocked down, they have to get back up. Like, this really slows down attack rates. It is so annoying to attack into this. They take a bunch of damage. This is actually quite powerful in that regard. It is also very long recharge and very long, or a very high energy cost. I'd prefer this at like 10 energy and like a 15 second recharge and like a 5 second duration. This is just another one of those skills. Like, Monk has had several of these, right? Where it's like Spellbreaker, this Mark of Protection, that are all like, okay, I see you have this really long uptime that's super eclipsed by a super long recharge. Your effect is really powerful, and it doesn't need to last that long. And it would be a lot better if it was shorter duration, shorter turnaround time. Like, even if it was the same sort of uptime and it was just like a third, so like 6 seconds with 15 second recharge and at like 10 energy or something like that, it'd be just way more exciting. As it is, while the effect is extremely powerful, it's also hard to make good use of just because of the length of the recharge. I do feel like this is kind of okay. I'm going to give this a 3. The effect is just powerful enough to warrant that, I think. So I feel like it's the sort of skill that if I was actually happier bringing Smiting Prayers and if Ray of Judgment wasn't so freaking standout amazing, I'd actually be okay with bringing Shield of Judgment sometimes. But I do wish the design had been tweaked to kind of allow you to be able to switch its position around more regularly is really kind of what it comes down to. Signet of Judgment. This is 1 second activation time, 20-second recharge. It is an elite signet. Target foe is knocked down. That foe and all adjacent foes take 63 holy damage. Also known as the skill that the Azure Shadows love to spam on you in the Southern Shiver Peaks. Oh, that gets annoying. This is okay. I don't dislike running it. It's cheap, which can be really nice. It's not really a viable alternative to Ray of Judgment. Ray of Judgment's damage is just so much better. Between the burning for 3 seconds, which is, again, like 42 damage, armor ignoring, and the actual pulse damage, it quickly outclipses this. The knockdown is nice. The recharge is a little bit long on this. To me, this is kind of I'm going to give this a 3 just because I feel like, again, it's kind of like powerful enough. It's very close to a 2. And honestly, part of that 3 is just because I kind of like the skill. I have a soft spot for it, so Signet of Mystic Wrath. So this is 2 second activation time, 20 second recharge, because frickin' 20 second recharge is super popular in Smiting Prayers land. Everything takes twice as long to recharge as it should. Anyway, this is a signet. Target foe takes 29 holy damage for each enchantment on you. This is a 2. It caps out at 100 holy damage if I didn't read that part. So you need 4 enchantments on you to reach the cap. I think that this is potentially a skill that you can use in a 55 farm. It would just be very slow. Shields of Judgment works okay in a 55 farm. This is a nice little complement to that. But, like, I guess you could run it on a weird dervish build if you wanted to. Again, like, you really have to kind of go through some hoops to get maximum damage out of this. It's okay at, like, 90 damage with 3 enchantments. 87. The 20-second recharge and the 2-second cast time are just so long. They really damage the skill. So I appreciate the idea of what this is going for, and it's a nice little build around me. It's one of those rewards, like if you're playing Magic the Gathering, because that's or any other card game is kind of a good analog, where it's like, oh, this rewards me for doing a thing. It just doesn't reward me very well for doing the thing. So it's just kind of an underwhelming. It's like, oh yeah, it's a 5 energy enchantment that like shocks stuff when I kick spells. That's it. It's not quite what you're trying to do. Not that it's like bad per se. It's just a little underwhelming for how much you're putting into making it work. Signet of Rage. Signet of Rage is 1 second activation time, 20-second recharge. And yes, there are a lot of signets in Smiting Prayers for some reason. Signet of Rage is a signet, as you would expect. Target foe takes 41 holy damage and plus 9 holy damage for each adrenaline skill that foe has. So this is specifically targeted primarily against warriors, dervishes, and paragons, because this is the professions that have adrenaline. Of course, you can always secondary those and bring those. This is going to be a little underwhelming. So if they have 8 adrenaline skills, which is very unlikely, but maybe they're running a Battle Rage bar and they're like, everything's adrenaline all the time, then this is going to deal a pretty decent amount of damage, because that's going to be 72 plus 41 is 113 damage. 113 holy damage is pretty reasonable, but that 20-second recharge, again, is a real kick in the pants. A lot of the time, this is maybe going to be like 68 damage with 3 adrenaline skills. I would definitely want to research enemies in the area to see how many adrenaline skills they had before I would even consider bringing this, and I wouldn't consider bringing this. So I feel like I'm going to give this a 2. It does technically do a thing, and it like technically is a punishment skill for punishing certain playstyles and stuff. I want it to be better. There's a huge gulf between Mesmer signets and Monk offensive signets. That's all I'm really saying here. Smite is 10 energy, 1 second cast time, 10-second recharge. Yeah, 1 second. Did I say 1 second cast time? I don't. Anyway, it's a spell. It says this attack for some reason. This is a spell and not an attack. I don't know why it says this attack. But this spell deals 46 holy damage. If attacking, your target takes an additional 30 holy damage. So that's 76. This actually directly compares to Spear of Light. Spear of Light is a spell that makes a projectile that does damage and then does more damage if the foe is attacking. Smite has a shorter recharge but costs more energy and deals less damage. Smite is like... Honestly, it is a waste of an iconic name. I really wish that... Like, Smite and Banish are both skills that, like, they're very meh. And they're, like, really good names for stuff, and they're just so weak. And it just makes me a little sad that, like, such a name like Smite is wasted on a skill that is so weak. But that's Smiting Prayers in a nutshell. To me, this is a 2. I don't bring this. It's not like the worst thing ever or anything. It's not friggin' Withdraw Hexes. It's not Balthazar's Pendulum. But because it does do a thing, it's just it does it very inefficiently and it's kind of underwhelming. So I don't use this like ever. Smite Condition. Smite Condition is 5 energy, 1 second cast time, 7-second recharge. Spell. Remove 1 condition from target ally. If a condition was removed, foes in the area take 50 holy damage. So, this to me is another 4. It's a key sort of like part of the Smiting Prayers build. So, or like the standard Smite build. It targets an ally, it does a thing that you want, heals them of a condition, excuse me, and deals damage in the area. Excuse me, I am hiccupy. So, it's pretty good in that regard. It's certainly, you're bringing this because it does some nice area of effect. Like, in the area is a pretty freaking huge area of effect. So it does some really good area of effect damage and removes a condition, so it's a nice little package. So it is a long recharge for condition removal, but I think that's because it does a lot of area of effect damage. And when I say a lot of, I mean a lot of area of effect. Like, the area of effect is very big. The damage is okay, but it certainly adds up with the sort of build that it's part of. So I like the place that this one is in, too. I like, again, this is a nice twist on what Monk normally does, right? Monk normally is doing things to help its allies. And when it does that, like when it removes a condition, it heals them, things like that. This is flipping it on its head and saying, oh, I'm going to remove that condition, but instead of healing you, I'm going to deal damage to enemies in the area. And I really like that approach for Smiting Prayers, and I just kind of genuinely and generally wish that more Smiting Prayers kind of fell into that category of things, rather than mediocre target-specific foes things, because it feels like it's, how are you playing into an offensive area while still being a monk? And Reversal of Damage, Smite Condition, and our next spell, Smite Hex, all play into that, and I really like that about them. So, Smite Hex is 5 energy, 1 second cast time, 12-second recharge. Spell, remove a hex from target ally. If hex is removed, foes in the area, again, very large area of effect, suffer 70 holy damage. So this is another 4. I don't generally bring this because its effectiveness requires you to go in Smiting Prayers. But if I'm in Smiting Prayers, this is a standard part of that Smiting Prayers build. And everything I said about Smiting Condition applies here, except this has a fairly standard recharge for, like, it's 5 energy, it's 12-second recharge. Those are pretty standard for remove hex with benefits. I also like this better than the Mesmer version of Shatter Hex. Is Shatter Hex right? I don't know if this character has that. It's in Domination Magic. I'll go check, I guess. Yeah. No. No, it does not look like this character has it. It has a bunch of other random Mesmer stuff for some reason. Probably a bunch of skills. Oh, this guy started off as Mesmer Secondary, so that's why. I can actually check this really quickly if I just go ahead and throw, say, Daedalon and pop over to him. So he doesn't have it on, but he would have access to it. So I like Smite Hex better than where is it? Shatter Hex. It is Shatter Hex. Yeah. So Shatter Hex deals more damage, has a slightly shorter recharge, but the energy cost difference is just huge. Now this guy has 15 domination magic, so you're not quite getting the standard figure. 102. So this deals about 30 more damage. Technically, Smite Hex will deal armor ignoring damage, but it's really interesting that, or will deal double damage to undead, excuse me, is what I was trying to say there. It's really interesting that they're basically the same skill, like, framework of remove Hex from an ally if it does enemies take damage. Now, the other thing to note, I'm just going to pop this back up, is Shatter Hex is near that ally, whereas Smite Hex is in the area. That's a bigger area of effect. Smite Hex actually has a bigger area of effect. Deals less damage, but it's holy damage, which sometimes has upside and costs less energy, whereas Shatter Hex has slightly shorter recharge. Much shorter with fast casting random ridiculousness. But anyway, in general, I like Smite Hex decently well, and I do like it a bit better than that one. But I'm often not going to bring it because it requires me to go into Smiting Prayers, which I typically do not do. Anyway, that's enough about Smite Hex. Let's go to Spear of Light. So Spear of Light is 5 energy, 1 second cast time, 15 second recharge. Spell, Spear of Light flies toward target foe and deals 50 holy damage if it hits, and it deals plus 51 damage if it hits an attacking foe. So this obviously is often going to hit for 101 damage. That's pretty good, but only being 5 energy is really nice. The 15 second recharge is quite long. I would much prefer to see this at like 7. Then it would be a lot more, just a lot better. This is the thing, right? Smiting Prayers in general, they cost too much energy, they have too long of a recharge, things like that. Or their effect is a little too weak. This one's effect is on point. This is where you want it. It's actually pretty solid. But that 15 second recharge is just a bit long. So to me, this is another like 2. I don't bring this. It's not terrible, but it's just, if I'm a Smite Monk, this sort of arrangement, except with Ray of Judgment, this sort of arrangement is the direction that I'm going. I'm not bringing these direct target spells because they're just usually not quite as exciting as doing these on my allies and healing them and Zealot's Fire triggering and that sort of stuff. We'll get to Zealot's Fire eventually. Stone Soul Strike we already talked about because it is the same thing as Holy Strike. That brings us to Strength of Honor. So it is 1 pip of energy to maintain, 10 energy to cast, 2 second cast time, 15 second recharge. Enchantment spell. While you maintain this enchantment, target ally deals 21 more damage in melee. I believe that's 21 armor ignoring damage. I'm not completely 100% positive on that, but I'm pretty sure. This is also really powerful. In PvP, it scales up to like 4, 5 damage that adds, because this effect right here in PvE is very strong. This is, now, in general, I wouldn't give this to heroes because they're not going to use it super well, but this is really, really powerful. This makes you deal so much more damage. It works great with daggers, it works great with a scythe, it works great with every weapon. You can use it. So, like, if I'm going to be, say, making that build that uses Stone Soul Strike, I'm probably going to bring Strength of Honor, too, because I'm already going into Smiting Prayers. It works well alongside these guys for that purpose. This is very powerful. I'm going to give this guy a 4. It is a reason to go into and do stuff with Smiting Prayers. That being said, there are the caveats of, like, I don't think the AI uses it well. I don't generally bring it with them. But the effect is really, really powerful if you're bringing a melee attacker. So it's absolutely worth considering. And I certainly like using it on myself as a melee attacker. So it's really good in that situation as well. Symbol of Wrath we already talked about. I gave it a really high score for icons and a really low score otherwise because it's not great. So that brings us to Word of Censure. So Word of Censure is 10 energy, 1 second cast time, and only a 2-second recharge. It is an elite spell. Target foe takes 63 holy damage. If your target was below 33% health, Word of Censure takes 20 additional seconds to recharge. Whoopsie! So... I don't know. Where do I go with this? I feel like this would be more interesting if it was an interrupt. If it was some sort of Cry of Frustration-like skill, except in Smiting Prayers, that could be kind of cool. As it is, like, this is very energy intensive at 10 energy per cast. And the fact that it has a 22-second recharge if you hit a foe below 33% health is terrible. So, yeah, the design conceit is interesting of like, oh yeah, here's a spell that's like really strong. It has super low recharge. It does a bunch of armor ignoring damage, and you can just spam it on enemies, but if they start getting low, then it stops being spammable. That's an interesting idea, and I like the concept. I would honestly prefer it if it just couldn't reduce enemy health below 33% rather than taking longer to recharge. I feel like that would play better. But this is not a very good spell. I would bring Signet of Judgment and Shield of Judgment before this. I'm going to give this a 2. It technically does do stuff. It's not worth the elite slot. I'm not interested in bringing it. So, yeah. And I don't even feel like it lives up to the name, like Word of Censure, right? Censuring something in this sense is prohibiting the speech of it, right? Like censorship. I think this is the same sort of thing. So you're like, oh, I'm saying you can't say stuff or whatever. I feel like it should be some sort of anti-spellcasting thing. And maybe it was in development and the effect changed at some point. I don't know. But I'm just not interested in trying to make use of this. So, yeah. Yeah. Maybe it was more of a backfire at one point in time. Who knows? I don't. I just know I don't think it's particularly good. Zealot's Fire. So this is another skill that I find the design of it to be kind of interesting. It is 10 energy, quarter-second cast time, 30-second recharge. Enchantment spell for 60 seconds. Whenever you use a skill that targets an ally, all foes adjacent to that target are struck for 29 fire damage, and you lose 1 energy. You do not lose 1 energy per foe, to be clear. You lose 1 energy for this spell. So this is another, like, 4. Technically, you don't have to, like, cast Smiting Prayers spells to make use of this. You're just probably doing that because you're in Smiting Prayers already, and that's kind of what you're doing. This is a really good skill. It has been hit over the years because it was very strong in PvP. It worked with that era of enchantment build that I was mentioning earlier, which is absolutely wrecked by Scourge enchantment. But anyway, I like the idea behind Zealot's Fire as well, of like, oh, now you're spending some damage or spending some additional energy to like your stuff that targets your allies now spills forth and damage around them. Like, in other words, it plays into that concept that I was talking about earlier that I like with Reversal of Damage, Smite Hex, and Smite Condition. It takes the sort of thing that Monk does, which is target allies, and adds an offensive spin on it. And to me, that's a really interesting way of implementing Smiting Prayers. Like, for example, if Word of Censure was something like an enchantment spell that made it so that way offensive spells that target that ally, the caster takes damage. I don't know if there's anything that's like takes damage when you target this person with a spell. That would be a really cool sort of playing in the monk area of like, I'm protecting you by making enemies die when they target you and stuff like that. That to me is interesting. That's compelling. But the whole, like, the way Smite works and stuff like that is much less interesting to me. because it's not taking what Monk does, which is target allies, and making a variant on it that says, I'm targeting my allies, but now it's offensive. And I just kind of wish it's playing in that space a bit more. So Zealot's Fire does, and I really appreciate that. And I think the spells that in general I like most about Smiting Prayers are either ones that are increasing the offensive capability of my allies, really take that idea of Holy Judgment and kick it up a notch to where it's actually effective, or most generally where it takes that Monk idea of I'm helping my allies and makes it I'm also hurting my enemies when I do that. And I think that that's a much more compelling, a much more interesting design. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. And until next time, everyone, when I cover the PvE only skills and the no attribute spells, take care and goodbye.